The morning started like any other at Kensington Palace. Birds sang in the gardens. Staff moved quietly through marble hallways. Security cameras blinked their steady rhythm. But in exactly 5 minutes, everything would change. Prince Louie, just 4 years old, had been playing in the East Wing drawing room. His nanny had stepped away for less than a minute to answer a phone call from the Princess of Wales. When she turned back, the room was empty. The toy cars were still on the carpet. The half-finished glass of juice sat on the table. But the little prince was gone. The nanny's heart stopped. She checked behind the curtains. Under the sofa, in the adjoining bathroom, nothing. Her voice cracked as she called his name. "Your Royal Highness?" "Louis?" Only silence answered. She pressed the emergency button on her radio. Within seconds, the palace security team activated Code Yellow, a missing royal child. Doors locked automatically. Guards appeared at every exit. The clock was ticking. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what happens next. Officer James Mitchell was stationed at the South Garden Gate that morning. A 20-year veteran of royal protection, he'd seen everything. Protests, security breaches, false alarms. But when the code yellow came through his earpiece, his blood ran cold. A missing child was every guard's worst nightmare. He scanned the manicured lawns through the iron gates. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Then he saw it, a flash of blue near the old hedge maze. The same shade of blue as the sweater Prince Louis had been wearing that morning. James didn't wait for orders. He sprinted toward the maze, his boots pounding against the gravel path. The hedge maze was ancient, planted over 200 years ago. Its walls stood 8 feet tall, thick with leaves and twisted branches. Even adults got lost in there. A 4-year-old child wouldn't stand a chance. James shouted as he entered the maze. His voice echoed off the green walls. He turned left, then right, following the faint sound of something moving ahead. His heart hammered in his chest. Every second counted. The longer a child was missing, the worse the outcome could be. He rounded another corner and stopped. There, sitting cross-legged in a small clearing at the maze's heart, was Prince Louis. The little boy wasn't crying. He wasn't scared. He was smiling up at something James couldn't quite see at first. Then he noticed the old man. The stranger was thin, dressed in a worn gray coat that had seen better days. His white hair hung past his shoulders. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were bright and kind. He sat on the stone bench across from Louis, holding something small in his weathered hands. James's training kicked in. His hand moved to his radio. Unauthorized person. Secure the child. Call for backup. But before he could speak, Prince Louis looked up at him with pure joy. "James, look what he showed me." The little prince held up a wooden horse, carved with incredible detail. Its mane seemed to flow. Its legs were frozen mid-gallop. It was a work of art. The old man stood slowly, raising his empty hands. "I mean no harm, officer." The boy was frightened, lost. I simply kept him calm until help arrived. James should have arrested him immediately. Should have pulled Louis away. Should have called the entire security team. But something stopped him. Something in the old man's voice. Something in the way Louis trusted him completely. "Who are you?" James asked, his hand still hovering near his radio. The old man smiled sadly. "Someone who once worked here. A very long time ago." And then he said something that made James's blood turn to ice. "I made toys for Prince William when he was Louis's age." The old man said quietly. "And for Prince Harry. Before that, for their father. Before that, for their grandmother." James felt the world tilt. The man would have to be in his 80s, maybe 90s. But he moved like someone younger, spoke with clarity. And the way he looked at the palace walls, it wasn't the gaze of a stranger. It was the look of someone remembering home. "Stay exactly where you are," James ordered. He lifted his radio. Code yellow resolved. "Prince Louis located in the hedge maze, south section. He's safe. But we have a situation. Within minutes, the clearing filled with guards. They surrounded the old man, hands on their weapons. Louie clung to James's leg, confused by the sudden tension. He still held the wooden horse tight against his chest. "He's nice," Louie insisted. "He didn't hurt me." The head of security, Commander Sarah Price, arrived last. Her face was stone. She looked at Louie first, checking him over with quick, professional eyes. Then she turned to the old man. "Name," she demanded. "Thomas Ashford," he said simply. "Though I doubt that name means anything to you anymore." I did. James saw Sarah's expression shift. Just for a second. Recognition. Maybe even shock. She recovered quickly, her voice sharp. "How did you get onto the grounds?" Thomas smiled that sad smile again. "I never left." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah's jaw tightened. She gestured to two guards. "Take him to the security office, now. And someone get the prince back to his family immediately." James bent down, gently taking Louis's hand. "Come on, Your Highness. Your mom is very worried." Louis looked back at Thomas as they walked away. "Can I keep the horse?" "Yes," Thomas called out. "It's yours. Just like the others were theirs." James didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. But the weight of those words settled somewhere deep in his chest. He lifted Louis into his arms and carried him out of the maze. The little boy rested his head on James's shoulder, still clutching the carved horse. Princess Catherine was waiting at the palace entrance. The moment she saw Louis, her composure cracked. She ran forward and pulled him into her arms, holding him so tight James thought she might never let go. "Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Her voice shook. "I'm fine, Mummy. I met a nice man. He made me this." Louis held up the horse proudly. Catherine's eyes met James's over Louis's head. Gratitude, relief, and something else. Fear that hadn't quite faded. James gave her a small nod. The silent language of people who'd just survived something terrible. "Thank you," she whispered. James nodded again and stepped back, giving the family privacy. But his mind was already elsewhere. Back in that clearing, back with the old man who somehow knew things he shouldn't know, who'd carved a toy fit for a prince in the middle of a secured royal estate. An hour later, James was summoned to Commander Price's office. She sat behind her desk, a thin file open in front of her. Her expression was unreadable. The old man, James began. "Thomas Ashford." "Who is he?" Sarah closed the file slowly. "He worked here. 57 years ago, he was the palace woodworker. Made furniture, toys, decorations. Apparently, he was quite talented." "Was?" James asked. "He was let go in 1968, budget cuts. Staff reductions. According to records, he didn't take it well. Security escorted him off the property. There was an incident. He tried to come back several times. Eventually, he stopped trying." James frowned. "That was over 50 years ago. How did he get in today?" Sarah met his eyes. "That's what I need you to help me figure out." "He won't say. Just keep smiling and asking if the royal family liked his gifts." "Gifts? You mean the horse?" Sarah opened a drawer and pulled out a plastic evidence bag. Inside was the wooden horse Louis had been holding. Even through the plastic, James could see the craftsmanship. Every detail perfect. Every line flowing like water. "That's not all," Sarah said. She pulled out her phone and showed James a photo. It was old, faded with time. In it, a young Prince Charles held a wooden lion. The carving style was identical. Then another photo. Young Princess Anne with a wooden swan. Same style. Then Prince William, as a toddler, hugging a wooden elephant. Prince Harry with a wooden fox. Every single toy carved by the same hands. James stared at the photos. His mind raced. But he was banned. How did he deliver these toys? "We don't know," Sarah admitted. "There's no record of him entering the palace. No security footage. No reports. Nothing. But somehow, every time a royal child was born, a toy would appear. Always wooden. Always perfect. Always in the nursery, that's impossible. And yet, Sarah gestured at the evidence bag. Here we are, James thought, back to the clearing. The way Thomas had sat there so calmly, like he belonged, like he'd been waiting. What did he say when you questioned him? He asked to speak with Prince William. Sarah's voice dropped. He said he has something important to tell him. Something about the palace? A secret he's kept for 57 years. James felt cold. What kind of secret? He won't say. Not to us. He insists it's for the prince's ears only. That's not protocol. We can't just... I know. Sarah stood, walking to the window. Outside, the gardens stretched peaceful and green. But Prince William heard about the incident. He wants to meet with Thomas. Tomorrow morning? Private audience. Just the two of them, plus minimal security. James couldn't believe it. Commander, we don't know if this man is dangerous. He breached palace security. He had unauthorized contact with a child. He also kept that child safe. Sarah interrupted. And according to Louie, Thomas calmed him down when he was frightened. Made him feel brave. A 4-year-old boy lost in a maze, and he wasn't crying when you found him. That says something. James wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong. But he'd seen Lewis's face. Seen the trust there? And he'd looked into Thomas Ashford's eyes. Whatever the old man was hiding, it wasn't malice. You want me there tomorrow, James said. It wasn't a question. You found them. You saw the interaction. I need your eyes in that room. Sarah turned back to him. And James? Whatever Thomas reveals tomorrow, it stays between us. The prince will decide what happens next. Late that night, James couldn't sleep. He kept seeing those photos. For generations of royal children, 4 identical wooden toys appearing like magic. And now a 5th. Prince Louie and his horse. He got out of bed and went to his computer. Started digging through old palace records. Most files from the 1960s were paper archives, barely digitized. But he found a few mentions of Thomas Ashford. Hired in 1965 as an apprentice woodworker, promoted to master craftsman in 1967, commended for his work multiple times, then nothing. Just a termination notice dated November 1968. No explanation. No details. James found one more thing. A newspaper clipping from December 1968. Local news. Former palace worker protests dismissal. The article was brief. Thomas Ashford had staged a quiet protest outside the palace gates. Held a sign that read, "They took my home." He was arrested for disturbing the peace. Released the next day. Then he disappeared from public record entirely. They took my home. The words bothered James. Most people would have written, they took my job, but Thomas had said home. Like the palace was more than just a workplace. Like it was something deeper. James closed his laptop and stared at the darkness outside his window. Somewhere in London, Thomas Ashford was sleeping in a holding cell, waiting for tomorrow. Waiting to tell a secret he'd carried for most of his life. What could be so important that he'd risk everything to come back? Morning came cold and gray. James arrived at the palace early. Commander Price was already there reviewing security protocols. Prince William was scheduled to arrive at 9. The meeting would take place in a small private room in the West Wing. No cameras, no recordings. Just the prince, Thomas, Sarah, and James. At 8:45, guards brought Thomas in. He looked smaller somehow in the daylight, older, but his eyes were still sharp. Still kind? He wore the same gray coat. In his hands, he carried a worn leather bag. Officer Mitchell, Thomas said, recognizing James immediately. How's young Louie? He's fine. Still talking about the horse you gave him. Thomas smiled. Good. Every child should have a toy made just for them. Something with love carved into every edge. Sarah cleared her throat. The prince will be here shortly. You'll address him as your Royal Highness. You'll answer his questions honestly, and you will not make any sudden movements. Understood? Understood, Thomas said quietly. They waited in silence. James studied Thomas's face. Tried to read what the old man was thinking. But Thomas just sat there, hands folded over his leather bag. staring at the floor. At exactly 9 o'clock, the door opened. Prince William walked in, dressed casually, but moving with the careful grace of someone always being watched. He nodded to Sarah and James, then turned his full attention to Thomas. "Mr. Ashford," he said. Thomas stood slowly, awkwardly, like his knees hurt. He bowed his head. "Your Royal Highness? Thank you for seeing me." William studied him for a long moment. "I remember the elephant, the one you made for me. I kept it until I was 12. Slept with it every night." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. He blinked them back quickly. Asterisk, "I'm glad," Thomas said softly. "I carved you into that elephant. Your spirit. Your strength. I could see it even when you were small." William sat down across from him. "Commander Price says you have something to tell me? A secret about the palace." Thomas nodded slowly. He opened his leather bag and pulled out a rolled piece of paper. Old, yellowed with age. He unrolled it carefully on the table between them. It was a blueprint, hand-drawn, detailed, showing the layout of Kensington Palace. But there were markings on it that James had never seen on any official map. Rooms that shouldn't exist. Corridors that went nowhere. And a series of lines connecting them all like veins through a body. "What is this?" William asked. "It's the truth," Thomas said. "The palace has a second structure built inside it. Hidden passages. Secret rooms. Most of them are sealed now, forgotten, but some are still accessible. I've been living in them for 57 years. The room went silent. James felt his stomach drop. Sarah's hand moved to her radio instinctively. "That's impossible," William said, but his voice was uncertain. Like he wanted to believe it was impossible but couldn't quite convince himself. "I can prove it," Thomas said. He pointed to a spot on the blueprint. "There's a door behind the bookshelf in the blue drawing room. Press the third panel from the left. It opens to a servants' corridor built in 1704. From there, you can access 17 other hidden spaces throughout the palace." Sarah was already on her radio. Ordering teams to the blue drawing room, William stared at the blueprint, his expression unreadable. "Why?" he asked. "Why hide here for so long?" Thomas's voice cracked. "Because they took my home. I had nowhere else to go. No family, no money. I'd spent my whole life making beautiful things for beautiful people, and they threw me away like I was nothing." "So you've been living in the walls," William said slowly, "watching us. Leaving toys for the children." "I never watched," Thomas said quickly. "I never spied. I just wanted to help. To give something back to the family I loved. To the children who deserve to feel special." He reached into his bag again and pulled out a stack of photographs. "I took these over the years. Not of people. Of moments." Spread them on the table. James leaned closer. Each photo showed a royal child finding their wooden toy. Prince Charles holding his lion up to the light. Princess Anne dancing with her swan. William hugging his elephant. Harry pretending his fox could run. And dozens more. Moments of pure joy. "I would leave the toy," Thomas explained. "Hide nearby. Wait until the child found it. And when I saw them smile, when I saw that moment of wonder," his voice broke. "That was enough. That was my payment. My purpose." William touched one of the photos. It showed him as a little boy, maybe 3 years old, fast asleep with the wooden elephant tucked under his chin. Thomas had captured it from a doorway, through a crack in the hinges. Not an invasion. Just a memory. Just love frozen in time. Asterisk, "You've been protecting us," William said quietly. "In my own way," Thomas admitted. "I've seen things over the years. Security gaps. Weaknesses. I would leave anonymous notes for the guards. Sometimes I would move things. Make sure doors were locked that should have been locked. Check on the children at night when the staff was thin." He looked at James. "I saw you once. 5 years ago. You were on night watch. You fell asleep at your post. I woke you before anyone noticed." James felt his face burn. He remembered that night, remembered jerking awake, certain he'd heard something. He'd checked the entire wing, found nothing, assumed it was his imagination. Sarah's radio crackled. "Commander, we found it." Exactly where he said it would be. William stood abruptly. "Show me." They walked through the palace corridors, Thomas leading the way with surprising energy. Staff members stopped and stared as the strange procession passed. An old man in a worn coat, a prince, 2 security officers, all heading toward the blue drawing room like they were following a treasure map. When they arrived, 2 guards stood beside an open bookshelf. Behind it, a narrow door hung ajar. Stone steps descended into darkness beyond. William turned to Thomas. "How far does it go?" "Far enough," Thomas said.
"Would you like to see?"
James wanted to object. Every protocol screamed this was wrong, but William was already stepping toward the hidden door. "Lead the way." Thomas pulled a small flashlight from his coat pocket. The beam was weak, but steady. He started down the steps. William followed. Then Sarah, then James, his hand on his weapon, every nerve alert. The passage was narrow, cold. The walls were stone, probably original construction from centuries ago. Their footsteps echoed. After 20 steps, the passage leveled out into a corridor. It stretched in both directions, lit by tiny windows near the ceiling that let in slivers of daylight. "This connects to the east wing," Thomas said, pointing left. "And to the old servants' quarters?" He pointed right. "There are 12 passages like this throughout the palace. Most people don't know they exist." They walked right. The corridor opened into a small room. Inside, James saw a makeshift living space, a thin mattress on the floor, stacks of books, a camping stove, bottles of water, and covering every wall drawings, hundreds of them, sketches of royal family members, architectural studies of the palace, designs for furniture and toys. William stepped into the room slowly, taking it all in. His eyes moved from wall to wall, from drawing to drawing. A lifetime of work, a lifetime of devotion hidden in the bones of the palace. "This is where you've lived," William said. Not a question, a realization. "One of several places," Thomas admitted. "I move around. Stay ahead of maintenance crews and inspections. It's not difficult when you know the palace like I do." Sarah was already photographing everything with her phone. Evidence, documentation, but her face showed. She looked sad, like she was seeing something she wished didn't exist, but couldn't help respecting James. Noticed a wooden box on a small shelf. "What's in there?" Thomas walked over and opened it carefully. Inside were more carved toys. A wooden rabbit, a dolphin, a butterfly, dragon. Each one perfect, each one waiting. "For the children who haven't been born yet," Thomas said simply. "For Prince George's children, for Princess Charlotte's, for Louis's. I won't live to see them, but the toys will be here, waiting. My gift to a future I'll never know." William picked up the dragon, turned it over in his hands. His expression was complicated. Anger and compassion fighting for space on his face. "What you've done is illegal," William said finally. "You broke into royal property. You've been living here without authorization for over 50 years. You've compromised security countless times." "I know," Thomas said. "You could have been dangerous. You could have hurt people." "My children? I would die before letting harm come to them," Thomas interrupted. His voice was fierce suddenly, strong. "Every child who has lived in this palace has been safer because I was here. I have been their silent guardian, their ghost. I have watched over them when no one else could." "It wasn't your job," William said. "No," Thomas agreed. "It was my choice, my purpose, my life." The 2 men stared at each other. James held his breath. This moment could go a dozen different ways. Arrest, prosecution, headlines, scandal, or something else. Something James couldn't quite name. William set the dragon back in the box gently. "How did you get in yesterday?" "To the maze?" "There's a tunnel," Thomas said. "Under the south garden, exits near the hedge maze. I use it sometimes to get fresh air. To remember what sunlight feels like." He smiled sadly. "I didn't expect to find Louie there. But when I did, I couldn't just leave him scared and alone. I'm sorry if I frightened anyone. That was never my intention. You kept him safe, William said. You could have done anything, and you kept him safe. You even made him a toy. He reminded me of you at that age, Thomas said. Brave, curious, ready to explore the world even when it's scary. William was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Sarah. Commander, I need to speak with Mr. Ashford alone. Please give us the room. Sarah hesitated. Your Royal Highness protocol? I understand protocol, but this is my family's home. And apparently, it's been his home too. William's voice was firm but kind. Please. Sarah looked at James. He shrugged slightly. They both knew when an order was really a request and when it was something more. They backed out of the small room and waited in the corridor. James couldn't hear what was said. The walls were too thick, but he could see shadows moving through the crack in the door. 2 figures. One young and standing, one old and sitting. Having a conversation that probably should have happened 57 years ago. 15 minutes passed. 20. Sarah checked her watch repeatedly. James just waited, trying not to imagine what was being said in that hidden room beneath the palace. Finally, the door opened. William emerged first. His eyes were red, not crying, but close. Thomas followed, looking smaller than ever but somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Commander Price, William said formally, I need you to arrange housing for Mr. Ashford. Somewhere comfortable. Somewhere with dignity. Your Royal Highness, he's not being arrested. He's being relocated. With a pension. Paid retroactively for the last 57 years of service. Sarah's voice rose slightly. William's expression was steel. Thomas Ashford has been an unofficial guardian of this palace and my family for over half a century. He's carved toys that brought joy to 4 generations of children. He's kept secrets that could have destroyed us, but chose loyalty instead. I would call that service. Wouldn't you? Sarah opened her mouth, closed it, nodded slowly. Yes, Your Royal Highness. Good. I also want those passages documented. Every single one. I want to know exactly what else is hidden in this palace. Mr. Ashford will consult on the project. For pay. Thomas's eyes widened. Your Royal Highness, I don't need you need, William said firmly. You've needed for 57 years and no one gave it to you. That changes now. James felt something loosen in his chest. Something he hadn't realized was tight. This was the right thing. The only thing that made sense. Thomas hadn't been a threat. He'd been a protector. A lonely man who loved a family from the shadows and asked for nothing in return. 3 weeks later, James was back on duty at the South Garden Gate. The hedge maze had been temporarily closed for maintenance. The hidden passages throughout the palace were being documented and sealed where necessary. Some would remain accessible, preserved as historical artifacts. Others would be locked forever, their secrets buried with the centuries. Thomas Ashford had been moved to a small cottage on the palace grounds. Staff housing, technically, but renovated and comfortable. He had a workshop now. Real tools. Good light. And a contract to restore some of the palace's antique furniture. The work he should have been doing all along. James had visited him once, off duty. Found the old man surrounded by wood shavings and half-finished projects. Thomas had looked happy, truly happy, like a man who'd been holding his breath for 50 years and could finally exhale. How's Louis? Thomas had asked immediately. Good, he carries that horse everywhere. His sister tried to steal it yesterday. There was a diplomatic incident. Thomas had laughed. Children and their treasures. It's the most honest relationship in the world. They'd talked for hours. About the palace. About the hidden passages. About the loneliness of living in walls while life happened on the other side. Thomas never apologized. James never asked him to. Some stories didn't need apologies. They just needed to be heard. Now, standing at his post, James saw a black car pull up. Prince William got out, carrying Prince Louie. The little boy was chattering excitedly, pointing toward Thomas's cottage. William saw James and nodded. "Officer Mitchell. We're here to see Mr. Ashford, of course, Your Royal Highness." James opened the gate, smiling as Louie waved at him. "James, we're bringing Thomas a present." "That's very kind of you." They walked toward the cottage together. James watched them go. The prince and the child and the secret that had almost destroyed everything but instead had revealed something beautiful. Something about loyalty and love and how sometimes the people guarding you aren't the ones you see. Later that evening, James wrote his report. The official version would be sanitized. An elderly former employee had been found on the grounds. Arrangements had been made. Security protocols had been updated. No harm done. Just another day at the palace. But James kept his own notes. The real story. The one about a man who lived in shadows because the light had been taken from him. Who carved toys with love because love was all he had left to give. Who watched over royal children from the darkness and asked for nothing but their happiness in return. Some people would call Thomas Ashford a trespasser, a security risk, a cautionary tale about background checks and maintenance procedures. James knew better. Thomas Ashford was what happened when loyalty outlived employment, when craftsmanship became devotion, when home wasn't a place you were allowed to have, but a place couldn't leave behind. The palace had many secrets in its walls. Most of them were about politics and power and the games important people played. But one secret had been about something simpler, something quiet, something that fit in the palm of a child's hand and brought joy without asking for anything in return. James thought about the wooden box, the toys waiting for children not yet born, gifts from a ghost who would never see the smiles they created. And he thought that was maybe the purest form of love, the kind that gave without needing to receive, that created beauty for its own sake, that protected without asking for recognition. A week later, James was called to Commander Price's office again. She sat at her desk, the same unreadable expression on her face. "The investigation is closed," she said. Officially, Thomas Ashford was an employee whose termination was mishandled. He's been reinstated with full benefits. The royal family has requested his story remain private. No press, no publicity. "Good," James said. Sarah studied him. "You know, this could have ended very differently. If he'd been dangerous, if something had happened to Prince Louie, but it didn't, and he wasn't." James met her eyes. "Sometimes our job isn't about following protocol. It's about seeing what's real." Thomas loved that family. Still does. That was never a threat. It was a tragedy we turned into something better. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Prince William asked for you specifically. He wants you to head the team documenting the hidden passages. Thomas will work with you. He says you're one of the few people who understood what he was trying to do." James felt surprised. "I didn't understand. Not at first. But you tried. That matters." Sarah handed him a folder. "Your new assignment? You start Monday." "And James, thank you. For seeing a man instead of just a problem. We need more of that." James took the folder and left. Outside, the palace grounds stretched golden in the evening light. Somewhere in his cottage, Thomas Ashford was probably carving something new. Somewhere in the royal apartments, Prince Louis was probably playing with his wooden horse. And somewhere in the space between, the story was ending the way it should have ended all along. Not with arrests or scandal or shame, but with understanding, with grace, with the recognition that love takes many forms. Sometimes the strangest forms are the most honest. James walked back to his post, the South Garden Gate, the place where everything had changed 5 minutes at a time, where a frightened child had disappeared and a secret had been revealed, and a lonely man had finally come home. He thought about Thomas's words in the maze. "I mean no harm, officer." The boy was frightened, lost. I simply kept him calm until help arrived. But Thomas had been describing himself too, frightened, lost, waiting for someone to find him, to see him, to recognize that he'd never really left because he'd never really been allowed to stay. And in the end, A 4-year-old prince had done what decades of security and protocol couldn't. He'd wandered into a maze, found a man who shouldn't have been there, and trusted him anyway. Sometimes children knew things adults forgot. That love wasn't about permission. That home wasn't about ownership. That the best guardians were the ones who protected without being asked, and gave without expecting anything back. Prince Louie still carried his wooden horse everywhere. He told anyone who would listen about the nice man who made it for him, about how it was the best present he'd ever received, about how one day, when he had children, he hoped they would have horses just like it. In his cottage, Thomas was already carving a wooden rabbit for Princess Charlotte, a wooden lion for Prince George. Gifts he would give openly now, with permission, with recognition, with the dignity of a craftsman finally allowed to practice his craft. The sun set over Kensington Palace. Guards changed shifts. Lights came on in windows. Life continued the way it always had, with rhythms older than memory. But something had changed. Something small, but important. A man who had lived in walls could finally live in daylight. A secret had become a story. And a child's trust had reminded everyone that sometimes the scariest-looking situations held the gentlest hearts. James would never forget finding them in that clearing. The old man and the young prince. Two people who shouldn't have been together but fit perfectly in that moment. Like a carved toy in a small hand. Like love in an unlikely place. Like coming home after being lost for 57 years. The wooden horse prince Louis carried everywhere wasn't just a toy. It was proof that devotion survives dismissal. That art outlasts employment. That the truest guardians are the ones who protect, not because it's their job, but because it's who they are. And somewhere in the palace walls, hidden passages waited. Some sealed, some open, some remembered, some forgotten, but all of them witnesses to the same truth. Love finds a way, even through stone, even through time, even through 5 minutes that felt like forever and changed everything.